Captain Dae-ho Kim stared at the scanner displays with growing concern as massive shapes appeared on the edge of the solar system. He had been commanding the Seoul Orbital Defense Station for 3 years and had never seen anything like these readings. The objects were huge, each one the size of a small city, and they moved with purpose toward Earth. "Sir, we have incoming transmission," called out Lieutenant Hae-won Lee from the communication station. Her voice carried a slight tremor that she tried to hide. The young officer had joined the station only 6 months ago, fresh from the academy. Dae-ho walked over to her station and placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "Put it through the main speakers," he said calmly. His crew needed to see him composed, even though his heart was racing. The voice that filled the command center was unlike anything any human had ever heard. It was deep and mechanical, translated by their computers into words they could understand. "Primitive species of Sol 3, you will vacate the outer colonies within 1 solar rotation. Compliance ensures survival." The bridge fell silent. Every person in the room understood what they had just heard. These aliens wanted them to abandon Mars, the asteroid mining stations, and all the outer settlements that millions of humans called home. They wanted humanity to retreat to Earth like scared animals. Dae-ho felt anger rising in his chest but kept his voice level. "Hae-won, get me a direct line to Admiral Sujin Park at Earth Defense Command. Priority 1. The young lieutenant's fingers moved quickly across her console. "Connection established, sir." Admiral Park's face appeared on the main screen. She was a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. "Captain Kim, I assume you received the same message we did." "Yes, ma'am." "What are your orders?" The Admiral looked directly into the camera. "Tell these aliens that they have 10 minutes to reverse course before we consider them hostile. Make sure they understand we are not asking for negotiations." Dae-ho felt a surge of pride. This was why he served under Admiral Park. While other commanders might have tried to open diplomatic channels or buy time, she went straight to the heart of the matter. "Understood, Admiral. Transmitting now." He turned to Hae-won. "Send the Admiral's message exactly as stated. No changes." The lieutenant hesitated for a moment. "Sir, shouldn't we try to open some kind of dialogue first? These ships are enormous. Their technology appears far advanced." Dae-ho looked at the young woman. "Hae-won, what did they offer us in their message?" "They said compliance ensures survival, sir." "And what did they demand?" "That we abandon our colonies." "So they offered us nothing except the chance to live as refugees on our own planet if we give up everything we've built. Does that sound like beings who want to negotiate?" Hae-won's face hardened as understanding dawned. "No, sir. Transmitting message now." Meanwhile, aboard the lead alien vessel, War Commander Thexval received the human response with something approaching amusement. In 800 years of conquest, the Vorthak Empire had encountered over 200 species. The pattern was always the same. First came denial, then desperate attempts at negotiation, then gradual acceptance of subjugation. "War Commander," reported his second-in-command, "the humans are demanding we withdraw." Thexval's multiple eyes flickered with what his species considered laughter. "Of course they are. How long until our occupation forces reach their outer settlements?" 6 hours to the red planet they call Mars, sir." "Excellent. Deploy the standard suppression pattern. These primitives will learn quickly." But Thexval had made a critical error. He had studied human communications and technology, but had completely misunderstood human nature. Every other species the Vorthak had conquered fought to minimize their losses. Humans fought to win. Back on the Seoul station, Dae-ho was coordinating with defense installations throughout the solar system. "Mars Colonial Defense, this is Seoul Station. Report status." Colonel Jin-woo Choi's voice came through clearly. "Seoul Station, Mars Defense. All civilian populations have been moved to secure facilities. Defense grid is active and ready." "What about your military assets, Colonel?" "What military assets?" Jin-woo replied with a slight smile in his voice that only another soldier would recognize. "We're just miners and farmers here, Captain, though I suppose some of us did serve in the military before we came to Mars." Dae-ho understood perfectly. Mars was supposedly a civilian colony with only a small peacekeeping force. The alien scouts would see exactly what they expected to see. Frightened colonists with minimal defenses. Jupiter Mining Consortium, report in, Deho continued. Sol Station, this is Mining Command. All operations normal, just hauling rocks and processing ore like always. The voice belonged to Captain Tae-Jun Park, who commanded what appeared to be a fleet of civilian cargo vessels. Though we did install some new defensive systems recently. Pirates, you know. Again, Deho smiled. Pirates indeed. As the alien fleet moved deeper into the solar system, their sensors registered exactly what they expected. Primitive detection grids, minimal military presence, and what appeared to be a scattered collection of civilian settlements. The humans were reacting with typical inferior species behavior, moving their populations to what they thought were safe locations. Thexval was pleased. Begin deployment to the Red Planet. Standard occupation protocol. These humans will serve as adequate workers once they accept their new position. What the Vorthak scanners could not detect were the extensive tunnel networks connecting every Mars dome, the weapons caches hidden in asteroid mining operations, or the fact that humanity had been preparing for this exact scenario for over 50 years. Admiral Sujin Park stood in the Earth Defense Command Center watching the alien fleet's progress. Her staff expected her to be coordinating last-minute defensive preparations. Instead, she was remarkably calm. Admiral, asked her aide, Commander Young-Sik Nam, shouldn't we be moving the fleet into defensive positions? The fleet is exactly where it needs to be, she replied. These aliens think they understand us. They've probably encountered dozens of species who rolled over when threatened. They're about to learn something important about humans. Which is? Admiral Park turned to face her aide. We don't roll over. We bite back. On Mars, Jin Woo was making final preparations with his team. Engineer Bo-Ra Kim had finished rigging the main processing facility with enough explosives to take out several city blocks. Mining specialist Dong-Hyun Kim had positioned charges throughout the tunnel networks that would turn them into kill zones. Every civilian who had been moved to safe locations was actually in positions where they could support the defense. Remember, Jin Woo told his people, these aliens expect us to surrender or run. They've probably never seen a species fight back effectively. Let's show them what a mistake feels like. The first Vorthak landing craft touched down on Mars 6 hours after their initial demand. They deployed in standard formation, expecting to secure landing zones and begin herding the human population. Their scanners showed minimal resistance capability. They were completely unprepared for what happened next. As the alien soldiers moved toward the main settlement dome, the ground beneath them erupted. Hidden weapons positions opened fire from concealed locations. What the aliens had thought was a mining laser suddenly revealed itself as a military-grade particle cannon. Jin Woo watched from his command bunker as the first wave of alien troops was cut down by coordinated fire from positions they never knew existed. All units, execute Phase 1. Show these invaders what Mars hospitality looks like. The explosion that followed when Bo-Ra detonated the processing facility was visible from Earth orbit. It took out an entire alien battalion and sent a clear message throughout the solar system. The humans were not surrendering. They were fighting back with everything they had. Aboard his flagship, Thexval stared at the reports coming in from Mars with growing disbelief. This was not how primitive species were supposed to behave. They were supposed to be frightened, disorganized, desperate to minimize casualties. Instead, the humans were fighting like seasoned warriors with obviously prepared positions and coordinated tactics. Sir, reported his tactical officer, we're reading massive explosions on the planet's surface. Our ground forces are taking heavy casualties. How is this possible? Our intelligence showed minimal military presence. It appears our intelligence was incomplete, War Commander. Thexval felt something he had not experienced in his entire military career. Uncertainty. Every conquest in Vorthak history had followed the same pattern. Overwhelming force led to quick surrender. But these humans were not surrendering. They were fighting back with skill and determination that suggested they had been planning for this confrontation. Deploy additional forces, full suppression protocol. But, even as he gave the order, Thexval knew something had gone wrong. The humans had not acted like any species the Vorthak had ever encountered. They had not tried to negotiate or buy time. They had simply prepared for war and begun fighting the moment they were threatened. What the war commander did not yet understand was that he had just triggered something the Vorthak Empire was completely unprepared for. He had threatened humanity's survival, and humans responded to existential threats with overwhelming force. The aliens had wanted a settlement. Instead, they had started a war. The Colonel Jin-Woo Choi crouched in the underground command bunker beneath Mars Dome 7, watching his tactical displays with grim satisfaction. The first wave of alien landing craft had been destroyed, but he knew more were coming. The Vorthak were about to learn their first hard lesson about human warfare. "Bora, report on tunnel network status," he called to the mining engineer who had become his demolitions expert. Bora Kim looked up from her control panel, sweat beading on her forehead despite the cool air. "All charges are set and ready, Colonel. When they try to move through the tunnels to flank our positions, they're going to get a very unpleasant surprise." The tunnels had been built over 20 years as part of the mining operation, but Jin-Woo and his team had modified them extensively. What appeared to be simple transport corridors were now a maze of kill zones, choke points, and dead ends filled with enough explosives to collapse entire sections. "Sir," called out communications specialist Mi Young-song, "we're getting reports from the outer perimeter. Second wave incoming, much larger than the first." Jin-Woo nodded. He had expected this. The aliens would respond to their initial losses by bringing overwhelming force. That was exactly what he was counting on. "All units, this is Mars Command. Remember your training. Let them come to us. Make every shot count." Above ground, the Vorthak were deploying 3 full battalions to secure what should have been a simple mining colony. War Commander Thexaval had ordered the increased force, after the unexpected resistance from the first landing attempt. "These humans fight better than expected," Thexaval told his tactical coordinator, "but they are still primitives with inferior weapons. Overwhelming numbers will crush them quickly." The second wave of Vorthak soldiers advanced in precise formation toward the settlement domes. Their scanners showed human defenders in prepared positions, exactly what they expected after the initial fighting. What they did not detect were the hidden weapon emplacements, the network of underground passages, or the fact that every civilian on Mars had military training. Jin-Woo watched the alien advance through his periscope. "Wait for it," he whispered into his communicator. "Let them get close." The Vorthak reached the outer defensive ring and began their assault. Particle beams and plasma charges lit up the Martian sky as they attacked what they believed were the main human positions. For several minutes it appeared their overwhelming firepower was working as the human defenders seemed to fall back. Then Jin-Woo gave the order they had all been waiting for. "All hidden positions, reveal and fire. Show these invaders what a real ambush looks like." The Martian landscape erupted as dozens of concealed weapon positions opened fire simultaneously. What the aliens had thought was empty ground suddenly bristled with gun barrels and missile launchers. Heavy mining equipment that had appeared abandoned revealed itself as converted military vehicles. Dong-Hyun Kim, barely 22 years old, but already a veteran of 3 colonial conflicts, led a team using converted mining mechs to flank the alien positions. The industrial machines had been modified with armor plating and heavy weapons that could punch through alien vehicle armor. "Target their command vehicles first," Dong-Hyun ordered his team. "Take out their coordination, and they'll be fighting. Blind!" The young pilot's mech bounded across the rocky terrain with surprising speed, its mining claws replaced with military-grade particle cannons. The aliens turned to engage this unexpected threat, but their weapons were designed for fighting other military forces, not converted industrial equipment operated by humans who treated combat like an extreme sport. Meanwhile, Bora was monitoring the tunnel network from her command station. "Colonel, they're trying to infiltrate through Tunnel Complex C, just as we predicted. Execute Demolition Plan 3, Jin-Woo replied without hesitation. Bora's fingers danced across her control panel. Charges armed and ready, triggering in 3, 2, 1. The explosion shook the entire dome complex as several kilometers of tunnel collapsed, burying an entire company of Vorthak infiltrators. But more importantly, it demonstrated to the aliens that the humans had prepared for every tactical possibility. In space above Mars, Captain Taejun Park was coordinating his own surprise for the Vorthak fleet. His cargo haulers had been positioning themselves for weeks, looking like nothing more than commercial vessels going about their normal business. The aliens had cataloged them as civilian ships and dismissed them as threats. "All vessels, this is Mining Command. Taejun broadcast. On an encrypted channel. Time to show these aliens why you don't threaten human cargo pilots. The response was immediate. Cargo bays opened to reveal hidden missile batteries, industrial equipment that had appeared to be mining gear transformed into military hardware. 30 vessels that the Vorthak had ignored as harmless suddenly became a coordinated attack fleet. Taejun's flagship, the Seoul Prospector, led the charge against the alien capital ships. Its massive ore processing equipment had been converted into a particle beam weapon that could punch through battleship armor. The other cargo vessels followed his lead, using their industrial equipment as weapons in ways the aliens had never imagined. The Vorthak fleet was caught completely off guard. Their tactical doctrine did not account for civilian vessels attacking military targets. Their weapons were positioned to defend against other warships, not converted cargo haulers attacking from unexpected angles. "Sir," reported the Vorthak tactical officer to War Commander Thexval, "the human civilian fleet is attacking our positions. They appear to have military-grade weapons." Thexval stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "Civilian vessels. Do not attack military fleets. This is impossible." "Nevertheless, sir, they are causing significant damage to our outer screen. On the surface of Mars, the battle was reaching its climax. The Vorthak ground forces had been decimated by the coordinated ambush, but they were regrouping for a final assault on the main dome complex. They had learned that the humans were better prepared than expected, but Vorthak military doctrine demanded victory regardless of cost. Jin Woo watched the alien forces gathering for what would clearly be their last major attack. His defenders had performed brilliantly, but they were running low on ammunition, and the aliens still had superior numbers. "Bo-Ra," he called. "Is the main facility ready for final demolition?" The engineer nodded grimly. "All charges are set. If we trigger them, the explosion will take out everything within 5 kilometers, including most of our positions." "And there's 2, Jin Woo replied. "Signal all defenders to fall back to the secondary positions. If these aliens want Mars, they can have what's left of it." As the human defenders withdrew, the Vorthak advanced with confidence. Their sensors showed the humans retreating in disorder, exactly what they expected after prolonged resistance. They moved their command center into the main processing facility to coordinate the final assault. Jin Woo waited until the alien leadership was concentrated in the facility before giving Bo-Ra the final order. "Do it!" The explosion was visible. From Earth orbit, a brilliant flash that lit up the Martian sky. When the light faded, the main processing facility and everything within 5 kilometers had been reduced to a crater. An entire Vorthak division, including their command staff, had been eliminated in a single devastating blast. But more importantly, the explosion sent a message that resonated throughout the solar system and beyond. The humans were not fighting to minimize their losses or preserve their infrastructure. They were fighting to win, and they were willing to sacrifice everything to achieve victory. Aboard his flagship, War Commander Thexval stared at the reports from Mars with growing alarm. What should have been a simple occupation had turned into a disaster. His forces had been outmaneuvered, ambushed, and ultimately destroyed by beings he had dismissed as primitives. "Sir," his aide reported, "we have lost contact with the ground assault force. Long-range scans indicate the entire facility has been destroyed." "How many survived?" "Unknown, sir. The explosion eliminated our ability to detect life signs in the target area." Thexval felt something he had never experienced in 800 years of conquest. Fear. Not fear of death, which was an honorable outcome for a Vorthak warrior, but fear of the unknown. These humans fought unlike any species the Empire had ever encountered. "Withdraw the remaining ground forces," he ordered. "We will reassess our tactical approach." "Sir, withdrawal is against Vorthak military protocol. We do not retreat from primitive species." Thexval looked at his aide with eyes that had seen too much in the last few hours. "Nothing about these humans is primitive. They prepared for our arrival, anticipated our tactics, and responded with coordinated military action. This is not a primitive species. This is an enemy." But even as he gave the order to withdraw, Thexval knew it was too late. By demanding humanity's surrender, he had triggered something the Vorthak Empire was completely unprepared for. The humans had not been intimidated by superior force. Instead, They had responded with violence and determination that exceeded anything in Vorthak experience. On Mars, Jinwoo emerged from his bunker to survey the aftermath of the battle. The main facility was gone, along with most of the industrial infrastructure they had spent decades building, but they had achieved something more important. Admiral Young-Sik Nam stood in the hidden command center deep beneath Europa's ice surface, watching as the massive doors of Shipyard 7 began to open. For 50 years, humanity had been building in secret, preparing for the day when they would face an enemy from the stars. That day had finally arrived. "All stations report ready, Admiral," called out Captain Mi Young-song from the Tactical Coordination Center. The young officer had been transferred from Mars after Colonel Jin Woo recommended her for fleet operations. Her experience coordinating the Mars defense had proven invaluable. Young-Sik nodded as he watched the display screens showing similar facilities throughout the solar system activating. Hidden shipyards behind Jupiter's moons, construction facilities in the asteroid belt, and weapon platforms that had been disguised as mining operations for decades were all coming online. "Signal all facilities. Execute Protocol 7. The response was immediate. Across the solar system, structures that had appeared to be civilian installations began revealing their true purpose. What the Vorthak scouts had cataloged as industrial facilities were actually military production centers that had been operating in secret for half a century. Captain Dong-Hyun Kim, who had distinguished himself in the Mars campaign, now commanded the first wave of humanity's real fleet. His ship, the Soul's Pride, was unlike anything the aliens had seen. Small, fast, and deadly, it was designed around a single principle that human military planners had learned from studying alien transmissions. Big ships made big targets. "All wings, this is Strike Leader," Dong-Hyun broadcast to his formation. "Remember your training. We don't fight like them. We fight like us." Behind him, 10,000 drone fighters launched from hidden bays throughout the Jupiter system. Each one was controlled by a human pilot, safely located in underground bunkers, but the aliens would see them as autonomous vessels. What they would not understand until too late was that these drones moved with the coordination of a single organism because they were all controlled by humans who had been training together for years. War Commander Thexaval watched the human fleet emerge from concealment with growing alarm. His intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. What he had thought was a primitive species with minimal military capability was actually a highly advanced civilization that had been hiding its true strength. "How many vessels are we detecting?" he asked his tactical officer. "Over 15,000, sir, and more launching every minute. They appear to be smaller craft, but they're moving in perfect coordination." Thexval had never seen anything like it. Vorthak fleet doctrine was based on large, heavily armed vessels that could overwhelm enemy positions through superior firepower. These human ships were tiny by comparison, but they moved like a swarm of insects with a shared intelligence. "Deploy the fleet in standard battle formation," he ordered. "Prepare for engagement." But as the two fleets approached each other, it became clear that the humans had no intention of fighting a standard battle. Instead of forming up in traditional lines, their ships scattered into seemingly random patterns that made targeting extremely difficult. Yoonji Lee sat in the Fleet Coordination Center on Ceres Station, her fingers dancing across holographic displays as she directed the movements of thousands of vessels simultaneously. She had been studying Vorthak combat footage for months, analyzing their tactics and identifying weaknesses. "All squadrons, execute pattern Delta 7, she broadcast. "Show them what distributed warfare looks like." The human fleet suddenly shifted formation, breaking into hundreds of small groups that attacked from every direction simultaneously. The Vorthak found themselves facing an enemy that refused to engage in traditional ship-to-ship combat. Instead, the humans used swarm tactics that made their superior firepower almost useless. Dong-Hyun led his wing in a diving attack against a Vorthak heavy cruiser, his small fighter weaving through the aliens' defensive fire with moves that no living pilot should have been able to execute. But Dong-Hyun was not just flying his ship, he was dancing with it, using reflexes honed by years of simulation training that had pushed human reaction times to their absolute limits. "Target their weapon systems," he ordered his wingmen. "Make them blind and helpless." The human fighters swarmed over the alien cruiser like angry bees, their smaller weapons targeting specific systems with surgical precision. While individual human ships were no match for Vorthak firepower, coordinated groups could disable much larger vessels by attacking weak points that the aliens had never thought to protect. Meanwhile, Captain Sheng Huan Park was leading a completely different type of operation. While the main fleet engaged the Vorthak in space combat, his Special Forces team was approaching an alien command vessel with a much more ambitious goal. "Remember," Sheng Huan told his boarding team as their stealth ship maneuvered alongside the alien vessel. "We're not here to destroy this ship. We're here to capture it intact. Command wants that technology." The boarding operation was unlike anything in Vorthak experience. Their ships were designed to repel armed assault by enemy soldiers, not infiltration by specialists who could move through ventilation systems and maintenance corridors like ghosts. Sheng Huan's team had been training for this mission for years, studying every piece of alien technology they could acquire through intercepted transmissions. "Breach successful," reported Specialist Hyojin Kim as she cut through the alien hull with equipment that looked like industrial tools, but had been modified for military use. No resistance detected. The human boarding team moved through the alien ship with the efficiency of people who had practiced this exact scenario hundreds of times. They knew where the alien command centers would be located, how their security systems operated, and most importantly, how to disable their self-destruct mechanisms. Sheng Huan reached the alien bridge to find the Vorthak crew frantically trying to activate emergency protocols. "Surrender your vessel," he told them in their own language, thanks to translation programs developed from intercepted communications. "Resistance will result in your immediate elimination." The aliens stared at him in shock. In 800 years of conquest, no enemy had ever successfully boarded a Vorthak command vessel. Their ships were supposed to be impregnable fortresses that could withstand any assault. "This is impossible," the alien captain said. "How did you penetrate our defenses?" Sheng Huan smiled as his team secured the bridge. "We studied your technology for 50 years before you even knew we existed. We know your ships better than you do." The capture of the Vorthak command vessel marked a turning point in the battle. Not only did humanity now have access to alien technology they could reverse engineer, but they had demonstrated capabilities that shattered Vorthak assumptions about human military development. Back in the main fleet engagement, Yunji was coordinating the final phase of the battle. The alien fleet was in disarray, their formations broken by human swarm tactics that they had no doctrine to counter. "All units, execute final strike pattern," she broadcast. "Target their remaining command vessels. End this engagement." The human fleet converged on the surviving Vorthak ships with overwhelming coordination. Thousands of small vessels attacked. Simultaneously, from every direction, their combined firepower focused on specific targets with mathematical precision. Donghyun led the final assault on Thexval's flagship, his fighter weaving through desperate defensive fire as he lined up his attack run. "For Mars," he said quietly as he triggered his weapons systems. The explosion that followed marked the end of the Vorthak fleet's effectiveness as a fighting force. Their flagship destroyed, their command structure eliminated, and their remaining vessels scattered or captured, the aliens faced complete tactical defeat. War Commander Thexval found himself aboard a damaged cruiser, watching his proud fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy he had completely underestimated. These humans fought unlike any species the Vorthak had ever encountered. They used technology in ways that seemed impossible, tactics that had no precedent in Vorthak military history, and a level of coordination that suggested they had been preparing for this exact confrontation for decades. "Sir," reported his surviving tactical officer, "remaining vessels are requesting permission to withdraw." Thexval stared at the tactical display showing the complete collapse of his forces. "Permission granted. Signal the Empire. Tell them we have encountered something unprecedented." "What should I tell them about the human capabilities?" Thexval considered the question carefully. How could he explain that a species they had dismissed as primitive had just dismantled his fleet with technology and tactics that surpassed anything in Vorthak experience? "Tell them the humans are not what they appear to be. Tell them we may have awakened something that should have been left alone." As the surviving Vorthak vessels fled the solar system, Admiral Young-Sik Nam was already planning the next phase of humanity's response. The aliens had expected a quick conquest of a primitive species. Instead, they had discovered that humanity possessed military capabilities that exceeded their own. "Admiral," Captain Mi Young reported, "the captured Vorthak vessel is being brought to the research facility on Titan. Our technical teams are eager to begin analysis." Young-Sik nodded. "Good." General Kyung-Min Cho stood before the massive holographic display in the newly constructed command center on Titan, watching as human strike forces prepared for humanity's first interstellar offensive. The captured Vorthak technology had been reverse-engineered and improved upon with frightening efficiency, and now human ships equipped with hyperspace drives were ready to carry the war to the enemy's home territory. "General," reported Captain Sora Kim from her intelligence station, "our infiltration teams have successfully penetrated Vorthak communication networks on 12 worlds. We're receiving real-time intelligence from across their empire." Kyung-Min nodded with satisfaction. While the aliens had been focused on military conquest, the humans had been conducting a completely different type of warfare. Using captured technology and superior understanding of information systems, they had turned the Vorthak's own communication networks against them. "What are we learning about their empire structure?" he asked. Sora pulled up detailed star charts showing Vorthak territory. "The empire consists of the Vorthak homeworld and 47 conquered species across 31 star systems. Most of the conquered species are kept as slave labor or food sources. None of them have any love for their masters." This was exactly the intelligence Kyung-Min had been hoping for. The Vorthak Empire was not a unified civilization, but a collection of oppressed species held together by fear and superior military force that created opportunities that human strategists could exploit. "Begin Phase 1 of Operation Liberation," he ordered. "Let's show these conquered worlds that the Vorthak are not invincible." Captain Jae-hyun Park led the first human strike force through hyperspace toward the Vorthak border worlds. His fleet consisted of 30 vessels that looked nothing like traditional warships. Using captured alien technology as a foundation, human engineers had created ships that combined the best of both civilizations while correcting the weaknesses they had observed in Vorthak designs. "All vessels, this is Strike Leader Jae-hyun," broadcast as they emerged from hyperspace near the Vorthak colony world of Zerion Prime. "Remember, our primary mission is liberation, not conquest. We're here to free the oppressed, not replace their masters." The Vorthak garrison on Zerion Prime was completely unprepared for a human attack. Their intelligence networks had been compromised, their communication systems had been infiltrated, and their defensive positions had been mapped by human reconnaissance teams weeks before the attack began. But more importantly, the local population had been contacted and prepared. The Zenthari, who had been enslaved by the Vorthak for over 2 centuries, had been secretly provided with weapons and tactical information. When the human fleet arrived, they found allies already fighting on the ground. Specialist Woo Jin Lee coordinated the ground assault from his command ship, watching as human special forces worked alongside alien resistance fighters to eliminate Vorthak's strong points. "This is incredible," he reported to Jae-hyun. "The local population knows their oppressors' weaknesses better than we do." The liberation of Zerion Prime took less than 6 hours. The Vorthak garrison, caught between human orbital bombardment and indigenous uprising, was completely overwhelmed. For the first time in their empire's history, the Vorthak had lost control of a conquered world, but the humans were just getting started. Captain In-ho Lee led a second strike force against the industrial world of Kithara, where the Vorthak maintained major weapon production facilities. Instead of attempting to capture the facilities intact, the humans used a tactic that horrified Vorthak military planners. They simply destroyed everything. "All targets eliminated," In-ho reported as his fleet completed its bombardment of the planet's surface. "Industrial capacity reduced to 0. Estimated reconstruction time 15 years minimum." This was warfare on a scale the Vorthak had never experienced. Human strategy was not based on conquering territory or enslaving populations. It was based on eliminating the enemy's ability to wage war by any means necessary. Meanwhile, Sora Kim was conducting psychological warfare operations that struck at the heart of Vorthak imperial control. Using their compromised communication networks, she broadcast messages throughout the empire, showing footage of Vorthak defeats and human victories. "Attention, enslaved peoples of the Vorthak Empire," her voice carried across dozens of star systems. "The beings who call themselves your masters have been defeated by a species they dismissed as primitive. Their fleet has been destroyed, their worlds are under attack, and their empire is crumbling. Rise up and claim your freedom." The response was immediate and catastrophic for Vorthak control. On world after world, enslaved populations that had endured centuries of oppression suddenly saw hope. Uprisings began spontaneously as species that had been beaten down for generations remembered what it meant to fight for freedom. War Commander Thexval, now commanding the defense of the Vorthak core worlds, watched the reports of rebellion with growing desperation. "How many worlds are in revolt?" he asked his intelligence coordinator. 14 confirmed, sir, with reports of unrest on 20 more. The humans appear to be coordinating with resistance movements we never knew existed. Thexval realized that humanity had been fighting a completely different war from the beginning. While the Vorthak focused on military conquest, the humans had been conducting intelligence operations, psychological warfare, and strategic planning that targeted the fundamental weaknesses of the Empire itself. "What about our remaining fleet? Strength?" 60% casualties from the Sol system engagement, sir. Remaining vessels are scattered across 12 systems trying to contain the rebellions. We no longer have the strength for concentrated operations. On the liberated world of Zerion Prime, Jae-hyun was meeting with leaders of the various resistance movements that had emerged throughout Vorthak space. The conference included representatives from 8 different species, all united by their hatred of their former oppressors. "The humans offer us something the Vorthak never did," explained Zenthari leader Kethmore through a translation device. "They offer us freedom to govern ourselves rather than simply changing masters." This was a crucial distinction that human planners had emphasized from the beginning. Unlike the Vorthak, who sought to build an empire based on conquest and control, humanity's goal was the complete elimination of the threat. They had no interest in ruling other species or building their own empire. "We can provide weapons, tactical support, and coordination," Jae-hyun explained to the assembled leaders. "But this is your fight for your own freedom. We're here to help. You win it, not to fight it for you." Captain Yeon-hee Kim, who had been designated as humanity's primary diplomatic coordinator, was meanwhile working to forge alliances between the various liberated species. Her background in xenolinguistics and cultural analysis made her uniquely qualified to navigate the complex politics of a collapsing interstellar empire. "The key," she explained to her team, "is to help them see that they have more in common with each other than they ever did with their oppressors. The Vorthak kept these species isolated and antagonistic. We need to help them build cooperative relationships." But the most significant development was happening in the research facilities on Titan, where human scientists were making discoveries that would change the course of the war. The captured Vorthak technology had revealed not just how their ships and weapons functioned, but how their entire civilization operated. "General," reported Chief Science Officer Dong-min Park, "we've made a breakthrough in understanding Vorthak's psychology and social structure. Their entire empire is based on a rigid hierarchy that cannot adapt to unexpected situations." Kyung-min studied the research data with intense interest. "Explain." "The Vorthak have conquered successfully for centuries because they always fight. The same type of war against the same type of enemy. Species that either submit quickly or fight traditional defensive campaigns. They have no doctrine for dealing with an enemy that adapts faster than they do." This analysis confirmed what human commanders had observed in every engagement. The Vorthak were not actually superior warriors. They were simply experienced at fighting inferior opponents. When faced with an enemy that could match or exceed their capabilities, their rigid military doctrine became a fatal weakness. "More importantly," Dong-min continued, "their homeworld appears to be completely dependent on resources from conquered territories. If we can disrupt their supply lines and continue supporting rebellions, their entire civilization will collapse from economic pressure." Kyung-min smiled as he realized the full implications of this intelligence. "So we don't need to defeat their military forces completely. We just need to cost them more than they can afford to lose." The war was entering its final phase, though the Vorthak did not yet realize it. Their empire was disintegrating as enslaved species threw off their chains. Their military was scattered and demoralized by defeats they could not understand, and Their home territory was under direct attack by an enemy that seemed to anticipate their every move. But Thexval was about to make one final desperate decision that would seal his people's fate. Unable to comprehend how quickly his empire was collapsing, he decided to use the one weapon that had never failed to terrify enemy species into submission. Admiral In-Ho Lee stood in the command center of humanity's most classified facility, hidden deep within the asteroid belt, watching as technicians made final preparations for weapons that should never have been built. The Vorthak threat to use. Planet killers against Earth had triggered Protocol Omega, and now humanity was preparing to demonstrate why extinction-level threats against their species always resulted in extinction-level responses. "Admiral," reported Captain Hyojin Kim from the weapons control station, "the Soul's Vengeance is ready for deployment. All systems are operating within acceptable parameters." In-Ho looked at the massive vessel on his displays and felt a mixture of pride and horror. The Soul's Vengeance was not designed to conquer worlds or defeat enemy fleets. It was designed to eliminate entire star systems by destabilizing their primary stars. It was humanity's answer to species that threatened total extinction. "Have we received confirmation that the Vorthak planet killers are approaching Earth?" he asked. "Yes, sir. 3 vessels are currently in hyperspace, estimated arrival in 18 hours. They appear to be targeting Earth, Mars, and Titan simultaneously." In-Ho nodded grimly. The Vorthak were planning to eliminate humanity's primary population centers and industrial capacity in a single coordinated strike. It was a logical military strategy that demonstrated they still did not understand what they were fighting. "Signal the Soul's Vengeance. Captain Woo Seok Park has operational command. Target the Vorthak homeworld system." Meanwhile, Captain Woo Seok Park was making final preparations aboard humanity's most terrible weapon. The Soul's Vengeance had been constructed in secret over a period of 20 years, designed around a single purpose that its creators hoped would never be necessary. Now that purpose was about to be fulfilled. "All stations report ready, Captain," called out his tactical officer, Lieutenant Min-Ho Kim. The young man's voice carried the weight of someone who understood exactly what they were about to do. Woo Seok looked around his bridge at the crew that had volunteered for this mission, knowing they might not return. Every person aboard understood that they were about to cross a line that would change humanity forever. But the Vorthak had made the choice for them when they decided to threaten extinction. "Engineering. Report on the stellar destabilization device," he ordered. Chief Engineer Bo Young Lee's voice came through the communicator with professional calm that masked the magnitude of what she was describing. "Device is fully charged and ready for deployment, Captain. Estimated time to stellar cascade, 6 hours after activation. Estimated blast radius, 4.7 light years." The numbers were almost incomprehensible. When the Soul's Vengeance completed its mission, the Vorthak homeworld and every planet in its system would cease to exist. More than that, the explosion would eliminate any ship or installation within nearly 5 light years of the target star. "Begin hyperspace transit. To target system," Woo Seok ordered. "Signal Earth Defense Command that we are proceeding with mission parameters." Back on Earth, Admiral Sujin Park was coordinating the defense against the incoming Vorthak planet killers while simultaneously managing humanity's final offensive operations. The next few hours would determine whether human civilization survived, or whether both species eliminated each other in a mutual act of extinction. "Admiral," reported Communications Officer Yoon Seo Kim, "we're receiving surrender requests from Vorthak commanders in 17 systems. They're asking for terms." Sujin looked at the young officer with eyes that had seen too much violence in the past few months. "What terms are they offering? Complete withdrawal from human space, cessation of all military operations, and tribute payments for the next century. Under normal circumstances, such an offer would represent a complete victory for humanity. But these were not normal circumstances. The Vorthak had threatened to exterminate human civilization, and that was a line that could not be uncrossed. "Signal all Vorthak commanders," Sujin replied. "Tell them their leadership has chosen extinction over surrender. Any ship or installation that does not immediately stand down and submit to human authority will be considered hostile and eliminated accordingly." The message that went out to Vorthak forces throughout the galaxy was unlike anything in the history of interstellar warfare. Humanity was not offering terms or negotiating for advantage. They were demanding unconditional surrender from an empire that had never surrendered to anyone. Captain Yeon-hee Kim, now serving as humanity's chief xeno-diplomat, was meanwhile coordinating with the liberated species throughout former Vorthak territory. Her job was to ensure that the collapse of the Empire did not result in chaos that would threaten the freedom they had fought to achieve. The key message, she explained to representatives from 30 different species, is that humanity has no interest in ruling you or replacing the Vorthak as your masters. Our goal is to eliminate the threat permanently and then help you build whatever type of civilization you choose. This was a concept that many of the liberated species found difficult to understand. In their experience, stronger civilizations always dominated weaker ones. The idea that humanity would help them achieve independence and then leave them alone was unprecedented. You must understand, explained Kethmore, the Zenthari leader who had become a spokesperson for the liberated worlds. No species in our recorded history has ever acted as you describe. Why would you help us and then ask for nothing in return? Yeon-hee considered the question carefully before answering. Because we learned something from studying your histories under Vorthak rule. Empires built on conquest and oppression always eventually collapse. We would rather have friends and allies than subjects and slaves. In the Vorthak home system, the soul's vengeance emerged from hyperspace and immediately began its approach to the primary star. Captain Woo-seok Park watched the tactical displays showing massive Vorthak defense installations and fleet concentrations around their homeworld. Sir, reported Tactical Officer Min-ho Kim, we're detecting over 300 Vorthak vessels in this system, including their entire remaining battle fleet. They appear to be preparing for final defensive operations. Woo-seok nodded. The Vorthak were making their last stand in the system where their civilization had begun. It was a fitting place for it to end. Begin deployment sequence, he ordered. Target the stellar core. The Soul's Vengeance released its weapon into the heart of the Vorthak sun, a device that would cause the star to undergo catastrophic collapse followed by supernova expansion. It was a weapon that represented humanity's ultimate response to extinction-level threats. Device deployed successfully, reported Engineer Bo-young Lee. Stellar destabilization will begin in approximately 30 minutes. As the human ship prepared to retreat to minimum safe distance, Woo-seok received a communication from the planet below. It was War Commander Thexval, the alien leader who had started this war by demanding humanity's surrender. Human Commander, Thexval's voice carried defeat and desperation. What are your terms for ending this conflict? Woo-seok looked at the communication panel for a long moment before responding. You had terms when you first entered our system. You could have traded with us, negotiated with us, or simply left us alone. Instead, you chose to threaten our extinction. Now you face yours. Surely there must be some accommodation, some way to end this without total destruction. Woo-seok's voice was steady as he delivered humanity's final judgment on the Vorthak Empire. You wanted a settlement. You could have had peace, trade, or even alliance. Instead, you chose war. Now you understand the difference between fighting for conquest and fighting for survival. The communication ended as the Soul's Vengeance retreated to safe distance. Behind them, the Vorthak homeworld and its entire system had less than 6 hours before complete annihilation. But even as their world faced destruction, some Vorthak commanders were making different choices. Throughout their empire, individual ships and installations were surrendering to human forces rather than face elimination. The rigid hierarchy that had held their civilization together for centuries was finally breaking under pressure they could not resist. Admiral In-ho Lee received the final reports as the Soul's Vengeance completed its mission. Sir, stellar collapse has begun. Estimated time to supernova, 3 hours. All human forces have withdrawn to safe distance. What about Vorthak survivors? Approximately 40,000 individuals have surrendered and requested asylum. They're currently being processed at temporary facilities on liberated worlds. In-ho considered this information carefully. Even in the final moments of their civilization, some Vorthak had chosen survival over the rigid military doctrine that had led to their destruction. Those survivors would be given the chance to build new lives in the galaxy their empire had once dominated. The supernova that ended the Vorthak Empire was visible across 17 star systems, a brilliant flash that marked the conclusion of humanity's first interstellar war. When the light faded, the species that had threatened human extinction no longer existed as a political entity. Captain Yeon-hee Kim stood before the assembled representatives of 47 liberated species, delivering humanity's final message to the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire is ended,